maybe ሶስት ጥያቄ ያደረገኝ ይመስላል ወደ ፎርወርድ ማለት እንችላለን። So if you have questions,
so I think on the question about the visuals, so part of the issue Ethiopia is anyone that does business, and most of the business you do, usually and that's one advantage of Ethiopia, is most of the situation someone hasn't done what you're doing. So that's a good thing, because then you have a lot of room to go to be innovative or to be a first. But also the issue is there's not something you could kind of start on or refer to. And a very good example that I usually give is, for example, let's say you want to start a factory in Ethiopia. Let's say you're a foreign investor. It's not enough for you to just build a factory, but you also have to build the road between your factory to the main road, right? That's the reality of really it's a good example of that explains the reality of doing business in Ethiopia. It's not enough to just do whatever you are trying to do. You also have to usually build the road. So it's really similar to any startups in Ethiopia as well. It's not enough to just build a good product, but also you have to now, even in some situation, create a sector around it, right? That you have to communicate that there's something like this. It's a common thing, because you have to do a lot of education and everything. So for us as well, most of the visuals we do, part of the reason we do everything, the media content, the visuals, and the data is because it's not most of the time you don't find them online. They don't exist. So it's not like we go and aggregate them from one place and then we put a source. So most of the time we do the actual groundwork. Let's say we do a visual in one ecosystem or one sector. We have to do the actual primary data collection. So we are the source in a sense. So that's why you don't see any, like I said, sources this one. There's some there obviously we take from others, but most of the stuff we do, we're the one that's doing that as a first time. So that means, again, that's the beauty of it, as the first one, but you still have to do everything from ground up. So that's usually why. But I think it's a good advice anyhow, when we have to put some information on the website, how we do data collection and everything. But the general principle is that. On the second question, I think the due diligence part. So so when you say due diligence, basically what you're saying is somebody is trying to put money in your company. So what they want to understand is, one, do they have the systems, the process, the organization structure to be able to use that money to what's being intended, and then would that be used to grow the business and then give me a return? Really, it's just completely a capitalistic need, right? So I'm investing in your money. I want to make money. So the whole point of due diligence is I want to see your organization capacity to be able to manage that money. So that means, for example, do you have a proper financial system? Right? So do you have money come in and go out? Does it properly recorded? And on a external entity verified ተደርጓል? So those are the things. For example, your financial system need to be proper. That's part of due diligence. If I'm going to analyze one company, I want to be able to see over the last 1 or 2 years how much money came in, what was being spent, was it being spent properly, and then all that financial documentation, and have you paid your tax and all the the government stuff, and all that need to be verified by an external entity. That's what I call auditing. So that's one part of due diligence. So the fact that you've done that tells me in the future, when you take my money, you also go through that process, because I can see you built up some process. Other stuff, for example, maybe you might need a board of advisors, right? So when you do due diligence, technically what you're doing is, what's the corporate structure and process that allows for that money to come in and then to help the business. So if you already have, for example, a set of advisors that have maybe sometime for MOU with you, and that you have a periodic quarterly meeting, for example, and let's say you documented that. That communicates for an investor. It's a very simple thing usually when you think about it. You have some advisors that are interested in your business, and every quarter when you do, you have a minute, and then you sign that off. That becomes, for example, a part of due diligence. It's a very simple thing, but for someone that's investing, it shows you have an intentional approach towards your business. Do you have like internal documents? Like, do you have a proper HR document that helps you to manage your employees? It looks a simple thing, but the fact that you have an internal HR policy communicates, for example, when let's say there's some risk in your organization. Let's say there's some abuse. Let's say there's a sexual abuse. Do you have an internal process to manage such issues? The fact that you have put in place shows, when you're in due diligence, you're just giving that document, but at least you already have an intentional process to manage such risk. So when I put money in your company, I know that if such issues happens, you have some process you've set to manage, and then that reduces risk for me. You have a proper business development plan that you're updating a period of time. You have a 2, 3, 4 year roadmap, a strategic document. That's part of a due diligence, right? The fact that you have put out what you're going to do the next 2, 3 years shows me you have you're just not saying I have an idea. It's a good just invest on me, but I also told this how we're going to go the next 2, 3 years. So when a due diligence is negotiable, a simple negotiable, internal processes, systems, documents that you do that communicates, you being intentional in the business, and you have processes you put to avoid risks, also to grow as a company.
So we will again also on the system settlement.
So what's the base use case? Okay, so there's a company called iPhone. We followed them, I think, early on Ghana. So there's a company called iPhone. It's a dialer app that allows you to aggregate USSD codes. Anyhow, check it out. So, but I think it's a very good use case. I think there's the story in terms of how they raised investment. Again, so initially they were trying to raise investment from local investors. So they went to all the investors, that you hear about. They couldn't close any investment, and they stopped asking investors, and they continued their product development for another 6 months. And while doing that, obviously they still needed money. So what they did is their core product, while necessarily wasn't generating revenue, they built a different product for companies that allows companies to fill airtime. So that helps them to generate some small amount of money. Again, at the same point, it wasn't a core part of their product. It was just a product that allows them to sustain that period of time. So they built that, and then they sustained after 6 months, and then they still went back to similar set of investors in the market. They still couldn't get investment. So now they start looking outside of Ethiopia, right? So they did a lot of very interesting things, but like they, for example, and on LinkedIn, they probably sent hundreds of emails to every profile that says I'm an angel investor. I did like 100 or 150, and then just 2 of them, they by chance go back to them, and they ended up investing on them. So I think the lesson there is, one, they looked everywhere in the local ecosystem to raise money. They couldn't, and they went back and figured out a way to generate money so that their product have some traction, and they still didn't get, so they didn't stop. They looked outside. Okay, so they didn't went to the usual big VCs and everything, but they targeted individual angel investors outside Ethiopia. And I think it's the tenacity for me that's very important there. That's what you expect when you're an entrepreneur. You just have to really figure out a way how to do things. So I think they got a free LinkedIn Premium account, which was just given. You get a free LinkedIn Premium account for the first time, right? So they used that 1 month to reach out to hundreds of angel investors that are in LinkedIn, and then couple of them, they got interested. So I think that the tenacity, and then really trying to figure out, taking out yourself from even the ecosystem. If you can't get money, where else can I get? And obviously maybe they got lucky, but to get lucky, at least they have something to show off. So I would say that's a very good example. On the second question, the relevance. So for me, I think obviously digital is, it's all interesting and everything, but I think it's very important to realize when you say startup, it doesn't necessarily need to be digital. The key point of being a startup is being innovative. So if you have an innovative product, it doesn't necessarily need to be on internet, right? It could be a hardware product. It could be you could be a farmer and somehow figures out a way to increase your annual output 5 or 10x with some type of methodology using. You're a startup founder. You have figured out a way to scale something that makes money, and it's different than the traditional way. So, and what actually works in Ethiopia, especially at this stage, there's much more bigger markets and less digital products, but obviously, again, they have to be still innovative, but you don't have to be digital. The moment you're digital, you're limiting yourself to a specific sector of the population, which is good by itself if you have good market, but you have to look out from outside and typical digital products and see if you have innovative solution around that. That even more is much more relevant in the current situation in Ethiopia, where it's much more harder to push a digital product adoption. And most of the successful product in town, if you see them, they have always a mix of digital and a physical thing. You go ride or some of the delivery companies and everything. There's some way they're delivering their product digitally, but the core reason the product was succeeded is because they have some offline and non-digital way of approaching things. So we don't have to associate, I think, digital and startup as synonymous necessarily. But if you have good product on a digital environment, good, if you can scale it. But again, the whole question of do you have enough market always comes to back. So the more you learn digital, then you have a bigger market to tackle to, then that increases your success rate.
Final round of questions, So digital startup ሲሆን እንዴት ነው credible እንደሆን ኮሚኒኬት የምታደርገው? አንደኛ ጥያቄ። ሁለተኛ ደግሞ ያው ኦፍሾር ኢንቨስተርስ አሁን እየበዙ ነው ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ እና since they invest in dollars ሪተርናቸው በኢትዮጵያን ብር ሲሆን how is that worth it? እና ለነሱም የሚሰጠው return is really worth it? ኢምፓክቱስ እንዴት ነው የሚለውን። ሶስተኛ ጥያቄ ደግሞ አንዳንድ ጊዜ ፋንዲንግ ከሚያስፈልገን በታች ስናደርግ how do we manage?
I think ከመጀመሪያ ጥያቄ ጀምራለሁ። የኢትዮጵያ ስታርታፖች ፈንዲንግ ሬዝ እያደረጉ አይደለም ወይም የአፍሪካ ፎከስ ኦን ኢንቨስትመንት የሚወጡ ሪፖርቶች አሉ። እነሱ ላይ የኢትዮጵያ ዴታ የለም። I think if I get the question, that was it. So ሁለት ነገር ነው ያለው። obviously ያው ኢኮሲስተሙ ስቲል እያደገ ነው። obviously we're not compare to Kenya or Nigeria necessarily. ስለዚህ part of the answer is no. We don't necessarily have lots of big high investment rate. When part of the answer is as well in the culture, but we don't often communicate whenever companies close. እኛ ብዙ ዳታ ኮሌክት እናደርጋለን። actually there's an upcoming report we're doing over the last 10 years ኢትዮጵያ ስታርታፖች ላይ ኢንቨስት ያደረጉ ዲሎችን ኮሌክት አድርገናል. It's much more higher than what's publicly available. Again, it's not obviously comparable to other African peers, but it's much more higher than what people expect. There's a lot of companies that are raising money. So part of it is a documentation and a communication ጉዳይ ነው። Culture, I think ገንዘብ ሬዝ ማድረግ አገኘው ማለት we don't like to talk a lot about it. If you go to another countries, they will find it on their websites. They do PR. So we don't often በጣም ኮሚኒኬት አናደርግም። የዶክመንቴሽን ጉዳይ አለ። እንግዲህ ሸጋም ለካምፓኒ ማድረግ የምፈልገው አንደኛው ይሄ ነው፣ ኢኮሲስተሙ ቪዚብል እንዲሆን ለማድረግ። So hopefully soon we'll have a report up that would provide much more visibility to the funding landscape. Who raised how much, when, የሚሉት ነገሮች። So hopefully that answers the question. And the question about offshore investment, ወይም የውጭ ሀገር ኢንቨስተሮች በዶላር ኢንቨስት ያደረጉ ነው የሚለው። So I mean, part of the reason Ethiopia was funding challenge አለ የሚባለው it's because there is no lot of foreign investors. So it's not a lot. የመጡ ነው ደሰም ግን a lot, and the reason is the reason is why you've already explained, right? That's you invest in dollar, and there's a forex issue in Ethiopia, so it's not necessarily easy to take out dollar. So the few that made it, አንደኛው ምንድነው fundamentally when you invest in a startup, we're looking at for 5 to 10 years horizon. It's not an immediate investment return. So if I would assume, I don't have any concrete, I don't know what they're thinking on their mind, but the potential reason would be, for example, if I, really believe there's a potential in the markets, and in the next 5-10 years, most of the forex issue, hopefully they get alleviated. I'm not trying to take my money in the next 2-3 years. So hopefully, if I believe that these issues will be alleviated, and I have some reason to invest, right? The other is, I think, there's lots of regulatory situation in how you invest in a startup. You could be an Ethiopian startup and then have another company in another country, and then you can receive money. So there's a lot of regulatory framework moving around it. So I believe some of them they're following that. So necessarily the money is not directly coming to an Ethiopian entity. It could go to a US entity, and then the US entity send it back, or a Mauritius entity. So there's a legal structure you could play around to accept an international investment. So that's part of the story, or part of the answer that would answer for you. Besides, so I think those two key things I believe. If fundamentally, if you believe the market will get better, and if I expect to get my return in the next 10 years, why not? So ሶስተኛው credibility የሚለው that's the fundamental thing with being an entrepreneur, right? It's not easy. I think one thing I always would like to mention in these types of sessions and everything, no one is going to give you a cure or a complete answer for your solution. You gotta figure it out by own. That's by being an entrepreneur by nature of means you by yourself. So I'm not going to give you a 100% answer that would kind of figure out. It depends on the situation. What these types of sessions and discussion could do is maybe just framework of thinking, so that you could just figure out those things out. So the framework I would approach is one, again, right? If you have a product that is somehow, again, solve a specific point, that helps, right? It's one point. Two, if you somehow can communicate that you've done something to that product, and that's just not an idea on paper, however small it is, right? If you can communicate that to an investor, it's really about, when someone invests on you at the end of the day, if you're a startup founder, it's not because you have a product that's generating money. What they're trying to look is how you think, what is the thing you've done so far, and what's the progress you've gone through, how short it is. They're trying to see some key behaviors that can signify you're going to be successful. So you just have to do things that will allow you to communicate that. It's not at the end of the day, at the end of it, it's a very high risk investment whenever someone puts in a startup. So I would say in those situations, try to do the things that communicates that you in that thing, that you really understand it, that you've done some progress, and then are you able to communicate that to an investor? I would look at it from that framework. Otherwise, good luck.
Thank you very much. ሌላ ጥያቄ ካላችሁ ኔትወርኪንግ ሴሽኑ ላይ can ask them personally. ስለመጣችሁ በጣም እናመሰግናለን. If you have anything to say?
No, I think that I've said it. It's again, at the end of it, it's about building business, and building business means you have to, it's very important, you have to know you're delivering value. And then at the end of the day, you can only learn how to deliver value or how to execute by doing things. Sessions like these, trainings, all of them, they're very important. They give perspective there, but at the end of the day, they're not the factors that decides whether you're gonna make it or not. So you want to really look to such type of engagement and a proper framework, which is you have to figure out how, part of being a business founder or a startup founder means how to deliver things, how to execute. So you can only learn those things by actually doing them. And that could be with your own startup, but also just go and work with someone else. I think there's this fantasy where if you're a startup founder, or especially when you're younger startup founder, that you have to somehow build this billion-dollar company just out of the blue. No, go to work for someone else. Know how to hire, how to talk, how to communicate, how to sell a product. These are all the skills you can acquire by working with someone else. I think I was talking to somebody and said, you can acquire these skills while somebody is paying for you. And then once you start to build your business, you could reduce the learning curve, the challenge, because you already acquired how to do those things. So being employed somewhere, working for someone else, that's still a good thing. Just because you're a startup founder, you have an aspiration, that doesn't mean you just could sit and think about your idea. So I'll leave you guys with that in mind. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys for coming to my commission.